So Ted Cruz is talking to a congressional hearing about anti-Semitism, explicit, overt anti-Semitism on campuses and at anti-Israel protests. I'm not even going to call them pro-Palestinian because, as I heard, I think it was Ami Kozak saying recently, we've seen that the protesters are not offended by Palestinian suffering. They are offended by Israeli success. We see that time and time again, particularly with the Hezbollah pages that were clearly used by Hezbollah to avoid Israeli surveillance. Israel managed to specifically target Hezbollah terrorists. We always heard from the anti-Israel critics, too many civilians are hurt. Well, Israel did a direct target there with minimal civilian loss of life. And still, they thought it was outrageous, war crime, all these things. But anyway, getting back to Senator Ted Cruz, as he speaks, he is interrupted by protesters. Of course, you have to protest people calling out anti-Semitism. Let's have a watch of Ted's presentation and then the protesters and how he responds to these people, because it's important to see what he says in response.
Senator Cruz.
Anti-Semitism is a unique historic form of evil, and over millennia it is manifested in violence, mass murder, and genocide. October 7th was one of the darkest days in human history when terrorists murdered over 1,200 Israelis and took 251 hostages. Women and girls were raped. It was the single largest mass murder of Jews in a day since the Holocaust. In the wake of October 7th, we have seen anti-Semitism explode across the United States and across the world, but especially on college campuses. As the ADL has illustrated, from 2022 to 2023, the number of anti-Semitic incidents more than doubled in the United States. But college campuses in particular have become vile incubators of hatred of Jews. At Cornell University, in the aftermath of October 7th, one student made vile threats, including statements such as, "If I see a pig-male Jew, I will stab you and slit your throat. If I see another female Jew, I will drag you away and rape you and throw you off a cliff." A student organization at California State University, Long Beach, circulated a flyer calling for a, quote, day of resistance in celebration of October 7th. You will note on the flyer is an image of a person parachuting with a fan attached, a direct reference to and a glorification of Hamas terrorists that used gliders to descend upon a music festival and murder 260 innocent people and take many more hostages. At Columbia University, the situation got so bad that the Orthodox rabbi on campus, Rabbi L.A. Buechler, had to make this public statement: Columbia University's public safety cannot guarantee Jewish students' safety in the face of extreme anti-Semitism and anarchy. It deeply pains me to say that I would strongly recommend you return home. This was directed to Jewish students as soon as possible and remain home. The rabbi had every reason to be concerned. At Columbia's campus, individuals yelled, "We love Hamas. We're all Hamas. Long live Hamas." At the University of Washington, the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors was told that she was called names, she was spit at, she was laughed at. She said she no longer felt safe on campus, and she was told to go back to the gas chambers. This is sick and horrific. At Columbia, when Jewish students were engaged in displaying the American flag and the Israeli flag, another student wearing a mask, because these protesters are oh so brave, they almost always cover their face, held up a handwritten sign saying Al-Qassam's next target. Al-Qassam is the military arm of Hamas. According to social media, this particular student is a wealthy student from Georgia. She's not Palestinian, but she has been taught lies and hatred, and she feels perfectly comfortable advocating the murder of her fellow students at Columbia. At MIT, students have reported they feel unsafe to go to class. And the MIT president has said that she would not discipline the students making those threats because if she did, they risk losing their visas and being deported. Throughout all of this, the Biden-Harris administration has been utterly absent. Does anyone doubt if the Klan were on college campuses terrorizing African-American students, threatening African-American students, that we would see the FBI there, that we would see prosecutors there, that we would see federal funding cut off to universities? Of course we would, and we should. But when it comes to anti-Semitism, the Democrats have a problem. I would note, this is occurring in blue states with blue governors because the Democrat Party is terrified of the pro-Hamas wing of their party. In states like Texas and Florida, we don't allow this. At the University of Texas, when violent protesters threatened Jewish students, police officers arrived and arrested them. That's what happened when you enforce the law. Every Republican member of this committee asked the chairman to hold a hearing on anti-Semitism in February. And yet we don't get a hearing on anti-Semitism. We get a hearing generically on hate because this administration, and this is the kind of anger and hate that is encouraged. You're now seeing the hate manifesting right here. Interestingly enough,
Please, the committee will come to order. The senator is recognized to finish his remarks.
So we now have a demonstration of anti-Semitism. We have a demonstration of the hate. Rabbi Goldfelder, let me ask you, has the Biden administration cut off the funding of any of the colleges that have allowed this hate? Have they indicted anyone for funding these violent protests? Have they indicted the people paying for the matching tents? Or have they sat there silently, and have the universities sat there silently while their students are terrified to go to class?
They have not indicted anyone.
They have not indicted anyone. Has any university had their funding cut off for allowing this sort of violent intimidation?
Not a single university.
I can tell you this. Next year, if there is a Republican majority on this committee, you will see real leadership. And next year, if there's a Republican administration, you will see people prosecuted for this sort of violence. This is being tolerated with the looking away, the blind eye being turned from this administration and this Department of Justice. And it is utterly disgraceful. And under Title VI, any university that allows this should have their funding cut off.
Senator's time has expired.
So just so you know, by the way, the person that was screaming at Senator Cruz said effing Jews. What we saw here was Senator Cruz not talking about people who are hateful to the Israeli government or even to Israel as a nation state. Not that I think it makes much difference between that and anti-Semitism, because when you're calling for the destruction of a country, that's hateful. People criticize Putin, they don't criticize the state, the existence of Russia. And so, but the point is that this was explicit anti-Semitism that we were witnessing. And still people called it out. And you know what? In some way, Jewish people and supporters of Israel are grateful for this kind of clarity. We see now that it was never about sympathy for the Palestinians. It was never about feeling bad for them. We have seen clearly it is simply anti-Semitism. And that's what this all comes down to. Whether you think that the Palestinian cause is legitimate grievance based on desiring self-determination, or whether the whole thing is really a cynical ploy in order to wipe out the Jewish state. And a very simple analysis of the history and of the conflict will lead you to understand that it is about hate, and therefore describing it as resistance, as we saw in one of those posters, is so heinous, is so obscene, and it's an outright lie. The entire Palestinian national cause is a lie. They were never interested in statehood. They never saw themselves as having a distinct national identity. All the leaders told us that pretty much. Their only agenda has ever been about wiping out the Jewish state. But the Jewish state and the Jewish people are here to stay. We've had enemies throughout our history, and we have enemies today. But the divine hand has so clearly been manifest through the Jewish people's story that despite all the odds, despite all these ancient empires and nations rising and falling, the Jewish people and their values and beliefs and their practices and their convictions have persisted despite it all. And therefore, this is just another manifestation of that age-old hatred. That's what it comes down to. And so we have to continue to be strong, to call out the lies for what it is, and actually to embrace our Jewishness even more than ever. Because the solution to anti-Semitism is not to hide away. Even when we tried that in Europe in the 19th and 20th century, Europe said, stop trying to fizzle out and assimilate and become like one of us. We know you're different. So the only solution to anti-Semitism is for Jews to fully embrace their Jewishness and for the world to have to come to terms with that. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.